going to be navigating Nova. This is going to be a 201. So we also have a 101 that's just more of a little bit of a basic version that is on our website. But before we do that, we always like to introduce ourselves. My name is Danielle Gloy, and I will be monitoring the chat today. And then leading our content is the incredible Allie. So we work on the supplier wiki team. We help research and write some of the content that you see or may have seen on our website. We want to create resources that are easily accessible and beneficial to you. So if you think of specific topics that you would like to see covered, or if there is certain content that you would like to see more of, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And then for today's agenda, we're going to start off by going over what Nova is. Then we're going to spend a little bit more time going into how to create new orders and why you would create new orders. We will transition to event codes and allowances, explaining what they are and where we can find them. Then we will share some best practices and strategies when working in Nova. And finally, we will end it off with some Q&A time at the end. So here are a few FAQs that we typically get during webinars. So first being, will we be getting a copy of the slide deck? Yes, absolutely. You can expect to see the PDF version of the slide deck as well as the recording of this webinar appear in your email inbox in about 3 to 4 business days. So don't worry about quickly trying to take notes or screenshot any of the slides. We will make sure that we get these resources to you. And then secondly, what is the best way to ask a question? So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat tab, and then you'll see a Q&A tab. So the chat tab will be a great place to submit any insight or just to engage in conversation throughout the webinar. And then the Q&A tab has 2 little speech bubbles, and this is where we ask you to please submit any questions related to the content, as I'll be able to monitor them and then tee them up for Allie at the end. Okay, so last little thing before we get into the content. If you are new to our webinars or have never heard of SupplyPike, we are a Northwest Arkansas-based software company who helps suppliers reduce revenue loss by detecting compliance issues and fighting them through business logic and automation. We do this in a lot of different ways with multiple different retailers like Walmart, Target, Amazon, Kroger, and we have recently just added Home Depot to the list, so really excited about that. And just a little shout out, we work with a lot of great suppliers. We have some of them up here today. And if your logo is not up here, we would love to see it at some point. Our goal is to help you get paid and get better. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Allie to get into today's content.
Awesome intro. Thank you so much, Danielle. And Danielle will be in the chat sending resources. I'm going to tee a couple up for her that I've bookmarked for today's webinar that's specific about Nova. But before we get into the content, I did just want to say we get this question often when we do webinars like our Nova webinar. Does SupplyPike have a solution for Nova? No, we want to educate suppliers on all the different things that they are dealing with, whether it is your supplier one app and retail link or item 360. Same with Nova. We want to talk about some of the things that we see suppliers are struggling with, help educate and make those processes easier. But like Danielle said, we focus on the revenue loss space. So I will be pointing to, in today's conversation, in today's presentation, some of the ways where if you're not setting up your POs correctly, if you don't have something automated correctly in Nova, it will cause revenue loss. I'll be pointing to those, but I did want to highlight that we do not have a particular solution to help with Nova specifically. All right, so to kick off today's content, we're going to start with talking about what Nova is. I did want to say this is our Navigating Nova 201 course. So we do have a one-on-one course that kind of goes through things a little bit more slowly. We have a lot of content today, and I am anticipating having questions in the chat at the end. So I will be keeping this at a quicker pace, but please pause, and I can always refer back to our Nova one-on-one deck or send some resources to kind of fill in the gaps if this is your first time joining a webinar or learning about Nova. Okay, what is Nova? There are a lot of acronyms in the Walmart world, and then you get even larger in the CPG again, another acronym to describe kind of the community we're in, consumer packaged goods communities of suppliers. There are a lot of acronyms. You can find some of our acronym sheets on Supplier Wiki. Danielle can send some of those, but today we're focusing on NOVA. So NOVA stands for New Order Validation and Approval. It's not that important to know what it stands for, but because there are so many different acronyms, sometimes it's important to kind of highlight that. And it really kind of explains what NOVA does. It's an order management system that helps with new order validation and approval, working with your merchant team. Primarily, it's going to be your replenishment manager, and thinking about your POs in two different ways to kind of start with. You have your system generated orders, which should be everything is set up correctly. You kind of understand the cadence that your Walmart team is going to be ordering. So from there, you kind of set it and hopefully forget it unless there's any kind of issues. Nova is kind of that secondary source for saying, okay, we know that in the world, nothing is going to be perfectly automated. You're going to have things where you need to kind of enter in something, you need to manually push an order for whatever reason, and that is what Nova is for. So it's for validating those orders, having a system that they get sent to, your merchant team can review and then approve, and then that action happens for that particular order. All right, so Nova does a couple different functions, and I will point out kind of to what I said earlier, Nova is not a replacement for system generated orders. So Nova is a tool to help you be a little bit more agile, to work with your replenishment team, but it is not necessarily your end all be all. What whoever on your team is pushing orders to Walmart should be in for all of your orders. It should be more of a supplemental resource to manage orders and make sure that everything is on track and is correct. So Nova is great for creating POs. It is great for PO maintenance, and we'll get into what PO maintenance means. It's great for copying POs, editing them, tracking them, and canceling POs. This may be on another slide, but I will say this now just because these are a lot of things. This is a powerful tool to use. However, if you are making these edits, this is something you should be doing with proactive communication and in tandem with your merchant team. So you should make sure that there's a heads up, or that there is whatever the communication is for your merchant team, how your merchant or your replenishment analyst operates on your merchant team, and the partners you're working with. Make sure that you are proactively communicating first before you are making these changes, because they do have to get approved by that merchant team or that replenishment manager. How do you find Nova? It's actually really easy. So let's say you've logged into Retail Link, you're on your home page, you would just click on the apps section, and then you would go in and you would be able to find Nova. It is exactly how it is spelled, capital N-O-V-A. Again, this is just another pro tip. If you are new to Retail Link, it is important to put the letters in specifically how they are. Sometimes if you don't capitalize things, the search function does not work. So if you're looking for it, you just type in the capital N-O-V-A, or you can, when you pull it up in the app section, there'll be little boxes or cards and it will say Nova and have a star next to it. Make sure that star is selected, and then it will populate in your app section. So if this is something you're using often, I would suggest populating it there. All right, how do you access Nova? So we get a lot of questions about access, and I'm looking at my notes right now just to make sure I'm saying the correct title for Danielle to share. I'll cover this here, but if you want a more in-depth focus on how to gain access to Nova, we have an article on that called Introduction to Walmart's Nova PO Management. So you can go and check that out. And there's a couple of different options that you can have. So there's a view-only option, and you can request that through the additional access request app in Retail Link or through your site admin. And if you don't know who that is, I would go read the article that we have, or we can always answer questions on how to find your site admin, but you should know them at this point. And then to edit, so that is to specifically do some of the applications in Nova, not just viewing them, but actually making new POs, maintenance, editing, canceling, that's something you would request through your RM to enable that feature. So if you don't have a working relationship with your RM, you may not be the right person. I would talk internally to see who is the right person to have edit access to Nova, and then determine that and reach out to your replenishment manager. All right, what is the scope of Nova? So who all can use Nova? That is going to be if you are in a Walmart store or Sam's Club. I cannot speak to Walmart Canada or Walmart Mexico. I believe they have different applications, but put in the chat if you work with Walmart Canada or Walmart Mexico, if that is the case. But I believe it is Walmart Stores US and Sam's Club for Nova. And then there is an exception. If you have import POs or e-com order creation for fulfillment centers, that is going to be outside of Nova, and that will change that will change on a cadence. I won't say that it's frequent, but I am assuming, watching kind of the trends of Walmart, that as they build some of the features out, this will either keep its legacy process or we'll see e-com actually integrated into this. We're seeing that with Luminate. DSS didn't have as many e-com functionalities, and we're seeing that with Illuminate. So I would keep the lookout for that, but as of now, I don't think I believe e-com order creation for FCs is not included. And then one last call out. Again, this is not a replacement for system generated POs. If you're having issues with your system generated POs, that's going to be your table stakes. You'll want to figure those out and not manipulate POs constantly in Nova for them to be correct. So it's important to set those up correctly and have that communication with your merchant team or your replenishment manager. All right, now we're going to get into navigating the Nova dashboard. So if you've been in a Walmart application, this will not feel too different. We're going to kind of go through the different ways you can look at this and understand it. But first off, you're going to see this kind of inbox here. That's pretty typical for some of the other Walmart applications. This is where all your tasks and their statuses are going to be, and we'll kind of break down what those different columns mean here. First is the requester ID. That is who is assigned to the request, and that can actually be used to search in Nova. So that's actually the request ID. There was a requester ID, and request ID is saying who the request is being sent to, and requester ID is who is sending that request. And then this will reflect the request type. So if it's order creation, maintenance, canceling a PO, editing a PO, all of those will be in your request type. So you can actually filter by that if you're looking for a specific PO. There will also be an order type, which we'll go into a little bit. If I say the words staple stock, cross stock, or talk about PO type 73, and you're kind of, looking at me and going, I don't know what that means, Allie. I would go download our distribution cheat sheet. That's one that would be really helpful just to kind of understand some of the logistics and to understand what those words mean, but we can always break those down in the Q&A as well. And then this is the total orders, pretty simple amount of orders that are within a request, and the request status. And that's helpful for filtering when you have multiple lines. And the request status could be anywhere from submitted, which is just meaning, hey, I'm the supplier, I've submitted this, and I'm waiting for someone to take action on it. There is also, I believe, executed, and that means that on the other side, the person responsible, usually the RM, your replenishment manager, has executed that change, so that is good to go. And then there's also, I believe, like rejected or canceled. So there's a couple different options, and we'll walk through those in a different slide as well. And then this is just additional context. You've got your supplier names if you have multiple events, and we'll get into what an event is at Walmart, when it was created, who's approving it, the requester ID, so different than the request ID, and then that approved by date. All right, now we're going to get into creating POs. And why would someone want to create a PO? I've got a couple reasons here. You are welcome to drop more in the chat because it may be specific to let's just say we're at a different retailer. You're creating a PO that's specific for Walmart versus if you were sending it to Target. You know, we're talking in the grand scheme of things, because most suppliers don't operate just selling to one retailer, especially if they're larger. Other reasons that you would do it specifically for Walmart, a specific promo that you're running, so that will probably be tied to an event code. Another reason would be in-stock recovery. I hate to bring it up, but it's just the closest example to mine. Whenever we had the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the issues was you couldn't get cleaning supplies, you couldn't get toilet paper, specific food items were, you know, the shelves were empty. So that is a time where you would be sending in-stock recoveries if you had those items available, which most suppliers did not, and that's why they weren't on shelf. Another reason you might create a PO is like an end of season push. Let's say you sent your first PO for back to school and you've got most of it in, and then, you know, maybe it's more of a, you're not necessarily in stock recovery, but you are wanting to fulfill any inventory you have left, or you're trying to support Walmart in any of their different events or applications of your particular merchandise. So if there's one in the chat that you want to drop that I haven't included here, there can be a list of reasons depending on category, retailer, etc. So, but if you're creating a PO, what do you need to do? So we're back to navigating the Nova dashboard. We kind of already went through the inbox. And what we're doing here is looking at this top section, this top bar, and it's got template and then it's got 3 buttons. This is where I would suggest spending your most time. So there's 2 methods to upload POs into, whether it's maintenance or PO creation or order copy, whatever it is. You can do it 2 different ways. There's one way that I would suggest, and that's what we're going to go through, and that's actually downloading one of the templates, and it's really just a spreadsheet that you fill out and then upload again, or you can do it manually. From the suppliers we have worked with, we don't suggest updating it manually for a couple different reasons. So the first being it's tedious. If you're going through and you're updating the particular lines, you may miss a couple things, and the templates come with actually instructions and kind of tell you how to fill it out. So it's a lot more user-friendly, and it kind of gives you more checks for yourself. And then you also have a saved version of that template. So you're saving that spreadsheet, and you're able to hold on to that saved copy in case something just doesn't go through, which we'll talk about the errors of Nova. It's really helpful to have that. As well as if most suppliers are not updating one little thing and then, you know, they're good to go. There's probably a couple different things that are tied to each other, and that's just, you know, for one line or one header. There may be multiple things within that, and that's just one PO. So we suggest downloading that template, not going in manually and playing around with it, but again, downloading those templates. And there's 3 of those templates that you can use, and each of them have different tabs within the template. So it'll be important to read those and understand exactly which template you should download, and then which tab within that template on the spreadsheet you should fill out your information. And we'll get into all of that. So like I said, there's one for PO creation, PO maintenance, and order copy. It's important to download the correct one, fill it out, and upload it to one of these buttons. So let's say I downloaded that order creation template, clicking on this and making sure they match like for like. Because if you don't do that, it's pretty simple, but it won't enrich the data. You won't get some of that auto population, and it won't be able to read your spreadsheet. So this is another application. If you've heard any of our webinars on Item 360 or to OTIF, it is really important to kind of understand when you're getting into before you get there, because there's a lot of room to make easy mistakes if you're kind of just trying to walk in blindly and figure it out. All right, so this is what it will look like once you download. I operate off of a Mac, so you can kind of see it looks like a Mac interface, but this would also look the same basically if you were downloading this on a Windows or a different type of laptop or desktop. So these are what the Nova templates look like. we're going to pretend like we're doing the order creation. So we would double click and open that up. Oop, I actually double clicked and I went 2 slides over. So with creating POs, you'll want to make sure you select the correct tab for PO creation. Now, this is really short and simple here. If you don't understand what staple stock PO type 20 means, that's okay. I did say, like, go download the distribution spreadsheet. Another quick read is our PO creation with Nova. That's actually an article on Supplier Wiki. And you can go in and kind of understand what those mean. So we'll go through these really quickly. Staple stock, it's going to create POs by warehouse number, and that's going to be for domestic suppliers. Cross stock, if you're familiar with that term, it's actually going to create POs for store specific orders or SSOs at the warehouse level, so it will flow through a warehouse. They'll go directly to a Walmart store, but they will flow through a specific DC that is for Walmart. So, yes. And then you've got DSD and DSDC. I won't get into those too much because that's going to be your direct to store distribution or your delivery consolidation. And that's going to be a little bit more specific. Usually Supply Pipe, we work with customers that do flow through DC specifically. And then I wouldn't worry too much about STOs or STO single or multi-use. That's going to be more internal. You can use them for Walmart. It's an option, but they usually don't like those types of POs as much, specifically multi, because they have additional transportation costs. So if this is something that you're not familiar with, I wouldn't necessarily learn it because it's going to be case by case basis. And then you've also just got work orders, and that's going to be more for like your service companies providing like individual services to Walmart. I haven't particularly worked with a supplier in that case, but let's just say, you know, you're providing the cleaning fluid for Walmart associates to, you know, clean the store. That would probably be more of a work order. All right, so you've selected the correct tab. Let's just say that we're going with cross-dock. So we're going to do a PO type 33. We've downloaded the creation template. We selected that tab. And then we will fill out the necessary information in each one of the columns in that spreadsheet. So it is really important to note here this color-coded box. This will show up in your template, and it is really helpful if you've never filled out a Nova template before to use this. I think it's still helpful just to check yourself because you can go through and each column is labeled in one of these colors. The required tab is going to be green. So if you upload a template and you're in the correct tab and you don't fill out the required, it probably will not populate because that is the data that is required to auto-populate some of those additional fields. Optional fields are going to be in dark blue. There's usually ones that label that it's going to be enriched data as well. It just depends on the tabs. So it will usually call out that this is going to be enriched, or it will just auto-populate when it gets in. Another one, if you're not grocery, then you don't have to worry about that light blue one. And then this like yellowish orange color is examples, and that just is helpful to kind of check your work. If you're not familiar with, let's just say like warehouse packing, and you're like, oh, you know, my number's 43, and you see the example and it's like 2, maybe you should just, you know, review and go, oh, I'm looking at case pack, like that could be a really big issue, and that could really create a lot of revenue loss. So it's really important to look at the examples and understand kind of what the template is asking for. 1, so it populates correctly. 2, so your PO goes through correctly. And 3, so you're not running into any issues that would, you know, cause a delay, cause you to get a deduction or an OTIF fine or a SQEP fine. Those are kind of the reasons why this is key to fill out correctly. And here we didn't add, you know, a screenshot of the full template because it is quite hefty, but here are some of the details of what must be populated in your PO creation form. When you're a supplier, I know that it is 64 tabs or more or less on 3 different screens, and it is no different when it comes to PO creation. So make sure you kind of have this information pulled in. I know some suppliers will go in and set up their own PO creation template, and then we'll double check and input it into the actual template that they're going to upload. So that's one option if you just want to double check yourself. The first one that is required is your create reason. So you have to have a reason. They have a couple different options. There's some listed on Retail Link that you could create. If you're listing this for an event code, that would be a great reason to, add that. I would just say make sure it's something that your RM would understand. Next is item number, makes sense. Distribution location, where it's supposed to go. Warehouse pack order quantity. This is where I'm pausing here because this is where a lot of suppliers, especially new suppliers, mess up. They put the wrong pack. Make sure it's warehouse pack order quantity. Double check. I know some suppliers have a calculator for warehouse pack order quantity versus the other packs. A suggestion is you can go look at some of our different content on warehouse packs or shipping. We have a webinar on Walmart Shipping 101 that kind of goes into depth on the different pack sizes. Moving on, your event code. So if you should have an event code, we'll go through some of those later. That's going to be required. Each one kind of has their own reason, so you can kind of look through that and see which one makes sense for your create reason. The header comment type, W or V header comment, this is only going to be required for certain event codes. And I believe the header Walmart type is Walmart versus vendor, so who's requesting it. And then line comment type or line comment, and that will depend on, if you're filling out for a creation on, actually, so header and line type, filling that out will change on PO maintenance, but since we're doing PO creation, you'll have to fill both of those out. All right, so we've downloaded our report. We selected the right report. We selected the right tab. We filled out our information flawlessly. We have no errors. We're ready to upload. So we would go in and we would click on one of these buttons in Nova that correlates with the template we filled out. So we are clicking on order creation, and this would populate. So we clicked this button and it will populate this. And basically all you have to do is match up the order type and the channel method, which you would have already filled out essentially in the template. So you'll have different options. It'll, tell you what type of order type it was, which we kind of went through. It's a PO, and then the channel method. We did a staple stock. So we're going to click that and click continue. And then once you filled that out, these are your options. So you have one option of a purchase order. If you had something different, like maybe a work order, that would populate, but they've really tried to make it easy for you to just fill out the correct one. And then the options you would get are cross dock, staple stock, DSD, and DSDC. All right, we talked a little bit about these. We'll go through this quickly. These are your channel methods, and this is going to refer to the type of purchase order that is created. And this is referring to how is this merchandise actually getting to the store? And there will be corresponding PO types for each of these. So staple stock is that merchandise has a slot in the DC. So staple is saying it's going to go to the DC, and then when it is requested by a store, it's then going to be sent out in whatever case pack or warehouse pack, case pack or forgetting the other one, but it's not warehouse pack that would go to a store usually. And that's going to be a type 20 purchase order. Next is your cross dock. So that is going to mean that is going through a DC, but it's literally going to go from one truck into the other and go directly to a Walmart store. It's not going to be slotted in the DC. So you can see where there would be issues if you click staple and it's a cross dock or vice versa, especially if you selected cross dock, but it was supposed to be staple. That means your product has nowhere to go in the DC, and there's not going to be extra room in a Walmart DC, I guarantee you. If it is, then it is your lucky day, but then it's not going to have a slot. It may get lost. You may incur SQUEP fines. So there's lots of issues there. DSD is going to be merchandise that ships directly to a store. So it's going to skip all of the DCs and it's going to go from wherever the manufacturer has it, whether it's in their warehouse or in their manufacturing plant, and go directly to the store. And then merchandise, DSDC is merchandise that is packed by store, but is then shipped to a DC, and that's going to be your type 73. All right, so we went through that, just kind of clarifying. Let's go back just to remind ourselves what we did. So we clicked one of these, we filled in our information, we uploaded our template. So you can either drag your template here and upload it, and it should auto-populate in those bottom columns, or you can fill this out manually. Again, I won't go into all the details, but I would really not suggest doing this manually, especially because we have, I'll add on one more reason. We've had suppliers uploading this and then they enrich and their information goes away, which is really frustrating. And then the blank columns, anything you didn't fill out, don't worry about it because it will be auto-populated. So that information will be auto-populated. If it's not, we'll talk about the reasons why that may be the case and how you can fix it. So let's say we uploaded it and everything went perfectly and it says submitted. Now the Nova PO is submitted for your Walmart Teams review. And once it's approved, you will receive those orders in your normal process. A couple pro tips from the suppliers we work with: get your buyer, your replenishment manager's approval before creating POs. Our suggestion is not to upload a random PO for something that you want to try. If you're having a meeting with your buyer team or your replenishment manager, and they said, yeah, we want to add that end of season push, or we want to do that promo, document that in an email and say, hey, great meeting, I heard that you wanted to do that end of season promo push, submitting that to Nova. And so you have documentation, because that's really important, and then create that PO in Nova. So that's the first pro tip. And then we do get this question, especially on our side, since we deal with a lot of these compliance fines, those manually generated orders. So even if you put an order into Nova, your buyer asked for it, it's out of your normal system generated ones, they are still subject to OTIF and SQEP compliance. So you have to be compliant on those orders, even if it's rushed, even if it's, the name of the game is speed and getting it out. It's the name of the game with Walmart is always to be efficient, but also completely effective and not falling subject to, not being on time, not having all of the inventory in full, having the correct labeling, correct packaging, palletizing that merchandise correctly. All of those are kind of outlined in some of our other materials. If you would rather read about them in an article, go look in our search function. We have information in ebooks that you can just download and review and then send to people, as well as webinars. So I won't go too deep into OTIF and SQEP, but if you haven't heard of those, highly recommend checking out both of your portals and some of our resources to help if you are seeing any of those compliance fines. All right, now we're getting into event codes and allowances. I've kind of mentioned these before, but now it's time to actually talk about them. What is an event code? So an event code is really just what it sounds like. It is a denotation for a special circumstance around a particular order. It helps everyone in the process who is touching that order and needs to know that information, why it is being sent out. So that would be around different issues like different circumstances like seasonality. Let me think of the next holiday coming up here. We just had St. Patrick's Day, so those orders are well in advance. Same with our Easter orders. Those have been put in probably since like before October. Back to school is probably the ones that we're starting to see now. We'll see some back to school event codes if you are in that particular category. A couple other reasons you would see an event code is the different types of set. So if it's a feature, display, a new mod set, a store set, whatever it may be, that could be within that. There's also a couple different emergency relief event codes. So sending particular items to areas that are affected by tornadoes, by hurricanes, whatever the case may be, it may just, be to that particular region. Event, I know that's really non-specific. It's an event code and it's for an event, but let's say Walmart does an event at a store, like a news store, or we live in Northwest Arkansas here, and we had a like El Paso, and I believe it was one of the really famous snowboarders that I'm forgetting. He came in, that'd probably be connected under like an event. So anyone who sponsored that, El Paso probably did an event code for like special event at a store. Last thing here is a specific request. So this could be, a manager of a store specifically. This could be your replenishment team. It could kind of vary depending on what's needed. This is probably going to be, hey, let's get like our in-stocks up to a certain level. All right, so where are these event codes? Let's say that you are new to your team and you're not sure what they mean. This is kind of outdated with DSS going away soon. We'll have to make sure that we include Luminate in here. But if you're unsure how your team has pulled event codes in the past and you're new in the role and there's, no one to ask, or you've asked and you still don't understand, you can actually pull a DSS report of previous orders and look at event codes. That's a really easy way to say, okay, how has my merchant team wanted to categorize these particular events in the past? And you can actually click on PO event and add PO event and add that to see past event codes to see how your team has categorized those. You can also download the event code CSV, and that has all of the Walmart event codes that are in their system. You can do that by going to Retail Link, going to the Academy, going to Order and Replenishment, and then clicking on Nova, and you'll find that CSV in that documentation. I will show some of the event codes here in a second, but I did want to call out, when creating, copying, editing POs, the event codes, the template does allow for the event codes to be listed. You can see here, this is a particular event code. It looks like this is a specific one for replenishment for a specific week. And then just note that there are going to be different situations for grocery and fresh that's required in the header comment. And this is why it's helpful to have some of these screenshots. It is important to read the documentation that is aligned to every column and to understand how it affects your particular category in your particular business. All right, like I said, here are some of these event codes. When you're reviewing them, it's important to choose the correct code. So I would either ask someone on your team, download that DSS report. You still have access to DSS, I believe, until April is when it is going away. We'll check and see if you can still see that in Luminate. I would assume so. This doesn't really seem like something they would cut out for any reason. But you want to make sure that those are correct, because that could be you don't want your event code to be the hindrance of why you didn't get a PO approved. So review some of these. Here's kind of a list of what we have pulled in the past. So like you can see, here's a Valentine's one. And it does call out if it needs a week. So that's important to kind of have a conversation with your replenishment team, but also to know that for everything to go smoothly, these particular event codes need either a week's time or do not. You can also see here, like we've got a couple different ones that we listed. Like here's an internal use one. So again, maybe not that helpful. Back to school called that out, that those are probably going through some time now. And then here at the end, you've got, your emergency relief that would not require a week, which makes sense. But most of these are going to say yes. And then we get a lot of questions about allowances. We do have a webinar on trade promotions and allowances at Walmart and kind of what that means, particularly if you're not, negotiating those or you're not understanding them. How do you further understand them and further understand the implications if you're not applying those? That can be a really hairy spot for suppliers to not understand, not apply correctly, and then actually, not be able to utilize those allowances well. So those are actually found in your order maintenance template, and that is something you would want to update on a line level allowance on a PO. So why are we talking about this here? We wanted to call this out specifically, like I said, some suppliers, you send a PO and then you realize I did not add the allowance on there and I'm going to get a deduction for not adding that, because yes, that is a reason you could get a deduction. It'd be really important to just shoot your buyer over an email and say, or your replenishment manager rather, that's probably the best person, and say, hey, I didn't add my allowance to this order. I need to add my allowance to this order. That's why I'm editing it. This is a really easy way to kind of save yourself any issues on the back end and make sure that those allowances are applied correctly to POs. And here's some of the information that is required for updating allowances. I will call out, this is not including any the grocery specific requirements. If that is you, just read the template. It's pretty cut and dry to understand what is required from grocery specific suppliers. So you just need your line item, your item number, and your line number, your allowance amount, the allowance percentage, and then that transmit to supplier. So that's the information that you need there. All right, we got a couple more minutes. I'm just giving myself a quick time check. I know I didn't get into very much PO maintenance. We do have a specific article on PO maintenance, as well as a webinar that goes through PO maintenance, similar to how I went through it for PO creation. And you can do that. You can download that webinar. You can find that. I'm sure Danielle can share that in the chat, as well as we have the PO maintenance within Nova article, which you can download. So I'm going to go into some of the best practices. We call this section using Nova strategically because we work with 500 plus suppliers. And here are just some of the best practices and conversations we've had with those suppliers and how that can apply to you when you're using Nova. All right, cancellation codes. This is really important to understand and manage well, because if you are not managing this well and it is your accountability as the supplier, you will incur a fine and fee. So we'll kind of go through this here. The process for cancellation codes is similar to how we talked about PO creation or editing. If you have to cancel a PO, please my recommendation would be to let your replenishment team know as soon as possible. It always sucks when you're not able to fulfill an order, especially to a large supplier like Walmart. But if there is a particular issue, you want to call it out sooner rather than later, even if you are getting a hint of something not being completely fulfilled. You can go ahead and edit that PO, and it's always better to under promise and over deliver is what I'm trying to say with your merchant team, especially if you think that you're going to have an in-stock issue. So with cancellation codes, the way that I would submit those is let your merchant team know, hey, we're seeing that you asked for 100 cases, we only have 80. Can we update this to 80, this PO to 80? Here's kind of our action plan to get this fulfilled in the future, but we want to make sure that we are not, shorting that particular order, because you don't want to frustrate your merchant team, but you also don't want to incur a shortage by just saying, oh, we'll just ship 80 and then we'll figure out the 20 later. That's not a good practice. So let's talk about some of these PO cancellation codes. Let's say an item is filed incorrectly. So go check out our Item 360 webinar, or go check out our webinars that we're doing with One World Sync. They help with making sure your items are set up correctly, as well as look beautiful on your website, or rather on your retailer's website. That's going to be accountable to the supplier, so you are on the hook for that and will incur any consequences that come for that. But you do want to make sure, if you have an item issue, that you are updating that on Item 360, pausing those orders so then you can update them correctly, and so there are no issues in your supply chain and you're not incurring any fines or deductions. PO written incorrectly by the supplier. It happens. Just make sure that you are, explaining that correctly. Same with if you don't have product to fulfill orders, transportation issues. We've got lots of documentation on prepaid and collect if you have transportation issues. So you'll see that's where the line draws. If there's a prepaid issue, it would be on the accountability of the supplier. For collect, it would be on the accountability of Walmart. And then you can kind of see some of these other ones that are, going to be due to Walmart's decisions. So like end of life or deletes. So merchant debt, they've decided to not keep your items on shelf. If there was a significant forecast inaccuracy, a module not being set up correctly, that is, that you would need to cancel those orders for, Walmart system error, because that can happen. So it's important to kind of understand some of these different error issues and understand how to categorize them, not only for canceling your POs or understanding why those POs are canceled, but making sure that that is across the board what's happening and what's being reflected. You don't want to have a cancellation for a Walmart system error, and then on the same PO, you're seeing a deduction. Because Walmart systems don't always talk to each other, your AP deductions don't talk to your OTIF compliance fines or your SQUEP compliance fines. You want to make sure things in Nova are reflecting accurately for those different areas where you could incur a cost. All right, we're getting to the end here. I want to save time if we do have some questions. There are a couple errors that suppliers encounter pretty frequently. If you click that enrich button, so after you've downloaded your template and you are adding in that populated data, if the file errors out, that could be happening for a couple different reasons. Check on your end to make sure that the updates are your updates in the template are correct. That could be erroring it out. But if it's still not working, you can always contact the internal teams at Walmart and ask for a solution. Sometimes the application is just fully down. And while that is extremely frustrating, one of the best places to kind of look is the Walmart supplier support group that is on Facebook. That is where a lot of suppliers will post any questions that they're having. And we have seen it helpful to add in there to see if anyone else is encountering the similar errors. Walmart may tell you, but usually other suppliers will tell you a little bit quicker of, hey, yeah, I'm seeing the same error. I was, instructed to take this action. So wanted to call that out. If a PO will not submit, check if the PO is already canceled or investigate why the PO is not able to update. It could be a system error with Nova. It could be because you're kind of double layering the same PO. And there you can investigate why that PO is unable to update. You can always, if it is a time constraint, think about, mileage may vary with your replenishment manager, but it may be just helpful to send that over to them and see if they can update it on their side. If, the roadblock is you're unable to update something. But again, you don't want to rope your merchant team into too much of the work that you're accountable for. Again, kind of reiterating this, work with your RM on Nova issues. This is just using common sense. So again, if you're seeing errors and issues on your side and you've tried everything and you've reached out to the internal teams, you can always pull in your RM to see if there's something on their end. And then if you see chronic issues, like I mentioned before, bring it to the attention of the support team. There is an option to kind of pull in the support team within Nova, and they'll usually let you know if you've identified, a widespread internal issue. But Walmart Supplier Support Group on Facebook is another great option for kind of seeing if you're not alone in a issue on Nova. All right, so here are a couple best practices just for filling out the templates from the people who do it every day. So for a smaller amount of POs, some suppliers like filling out the template online. Most have larger POs and they suggest downloading the template. We suggest just downloading the template, keeping that as your best practice to mitigate any issues. And then this seems really simple, but some suppliers forget to click that enrich button. It is down in the lower right-hand corner, I believe is where it is on the screen. So I know it's kind of hard to see. So click that. And if the file, if the file errors out or won't populate information, sometimes that can be used as kind of a refresh button and it will add in that additional information. So don't feel like you have to fill out every column either. All right, I went through that. I feel like in a good cadence. Hopefully there's some questions. If not, I'll just point to Danielle to see what she's got on the docket for us.
Thank you so much for going through all that content, Allie. It was really insightful. We did have one question pop through. So the question is just concerning the advanced order search results. So we had a comment come in, not happy that I need to run so many reports. We understand, i.e. filtering the MABDs for just 2 weeks at a time because too many results will cause the report not to work. In contrast with DSS, I ran one report for the last 2 years. This 2-week Nova report produced 99 header results, but with 23 line results. So can I request that I don't want line results and only want header results?
I'm going to say no. I know that's very frustrating. I don't think you can request only header results. I believe, let me just look here. I believe you can filter in the advanced search. I may be mistaken, but I don't think you can necessarily request to only see header results, but I think you can filter within the advanced search, but it kind of sounds like that's what you're already doing. I would say it is worth a shot to reach out to the support team and say, hey, it's not helpful to see line results. Can I just see header results? Like I said, most suppliers have a ton of POs. That would be my suggestion. I know Nova has some help sessions. I think they're on Wednesday. You can find that in the same link as I was referring to before. Let me see if I can find that again. Yes, this. I think you can find their help sessions by going to Retail Link, Academy, Ordering and Replenishment, and Nova. But from what I've seen and working with suppliers, I have not personally seen anyone who can keep their default to header results. So I know that's frustrating. Maybe we can investigate too if that's something that you can pull in Nova, Illuminate specifically moving forward. And that may be good feedback to also pass their team if that's not something they're doing now to make that tool more powerful for suppliers. But sorry that that's not like a, yeah, you can, and here's how you do it kind of answer. But thank you for that.
We will definitely look into that and then hopefully be able to produce some content for you that will just give a little bit of direction for that. It looks like we didn't have any other questions come through. If you guys in the chat, if you think of questions later or would like to share any insights, please feel free to reach out to us on our email, or you can find us at SupplyPike. We would love to continue the conversation with you. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you all soon.
Yes, thank you guys. Again, emails, you can find us there or at supplypike.com.